This live stream is under witness protection and you therefore will not see my face. I'm joking. I'm gonna turn on the lights and bring on the super bass expert, resident, Melbourneian. Oh yeah, did you know that you don't say Melbourne, you say Melbourne. Think of it as Melbin. Melbourne. I live in Melbourne. I like to visit Melbourne. You can't say, oh yeah, when I'm in Australia, I'm going to go to Melbourne. Because you're going to get called out on that. Hey, here I am. Let's bring on our special guest of today. The one and only. Let's see if I can hold my breath until he appears. Come on, my... Welcome to the Nav Bar. We're waiting for John Myers to tune in, and I haven't taken a breath since I sent the invitation, but I'm about to die now, so I don't want to start the podcast without any breath, so I give up. I promise you this is going to be an actual... I haven't shared the tweet. There it is. My goodness. Sent. Just checking that I've sent it properly. Yes. Sir, yes, sir. What is Astro? Astro, mate. Oh, I'm gonna do the whole episode. G'day, guys. Today we're gonna talk about Astro. Have you heard about Astro, mate? Too good, mate. Too good. I swear, if I have a couple of beers, my accent gets so much. It's pretty crappy right now. But I get a really good one when I'm like really completely not worried about, inhibition and stuff. Come on. Jon Myers. Jon Myers, where are you? Jazza! Show up, mate. Come on. Am I actually live saying all that stuff? Yes, I am. See, that's why you gotta go live, because the first time you saw like, oh my god, I'm live, what's happening? And then you just get on with it. She be right. Just enjoy the process. Yeah. So there's that. There's me waiting for John Myers. Oh my god. Where is John Myers? Yes. Oh, man. I'm gonna have to do the episode with Tom if John doesn't show up. I'm gonna leave that here, so when he shows up, he gets a bit guilty, Shout out to Think Mill while I'm here. Look at this t-shirt. How grand is that? I love it. I love working at Think Mill. The people are awesome. Ah, look who's showing up. Looky. 3, 2, 1. Appear. 3, 2, 1. Appear.
Hey! Oh, man, I was going to say, what an amazing, well-oiled machine, and then just ran into all kinds of tech problems. So, hopefully, that was all the tech problems for today.
If you ever look back at the start of the recording, I said to the audience, which is probably... Tom is here, but that's it. I said... I'm gonna send the invite and hold my breath until John appears. And I said, please welcome John. And I did like this for like 20 seconds and then kept talking. And then before I died, I went, I give up. And
you
then
didn't
another
believe
five-
in me. You
another
gave up
5
on me.
minutes. Yeah, when you start seeing little spots, and you're like, okay, let's survive. So we are
Bro
live.
Nifty is joining us as well. So navbar is really everything on the website. Really? Oh yeah, the navbar really is everything on the website. It is the most important part. Just like this is the most important podcast. Definitely.
Fun fact: we're building. We're gonna talk about Astro quite a lot, but we're building a site with Astro, and I just realized the hardest part to build. It says nothing to do with Astro, but it's gonna be the navbar probably, because it's just a simple site with like content, like read-only content. But there's lots of submenus and stuff. So then you're like, we need a responsive navbar.
All right, Simon. We need to jump into recording this episode because otherwise we'll just
promise
lose
I
all
did
our
not
time to
have
hanging out.
Did not have an extra coffee. I'm just very, very excited. And yeah, just the concept of producing 2 episodes in one morning.
Yeah.
Morning. Hey, wait for me.
Oh, sorry. Let me just... I'll just throw it back up and we'll start again.
See what I'm working with, guys and girls. 5 minutes late and then drinks the sip of water without waiting.
All right. Here we go. Synchronized water drinking. No, we got... I've got to get that sound effect at least once an episode. Otherwise, I'm not doing...
Okay, it's 3, 2,
I'm trying to make you spit all your water all over the expensive gear that you have there.
Yeah, this one is expensive. Okay, let's do it.
Welcome to the Nav Bar.
I know I'm thirsty because usually I just take a sip, and when I feel the water, I'm like, oh, 3, 4 more, it's gonna be good. I haven't drinking anywhere close to enough water recently.
Well, that's why we do the Nav Bar podcast.
Correct.
Because
Armando.
otherwise you do not stay hydrated. All right. Here we go. You ready to teach me all about Astro?
How about we do this episode where I intro you and you intro me?
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I like it. Go for it.
I think we can do this. No, I'm gonna get copyrighted. I know I have the rights or whatever. For those who watching live, I'm going to be John Myers, and John apparently is going to be the German version of Simon Vrashliotis.
Vrashliotis?
All right. Okay, but when you do me, you have to stop after Australia, and then I talk again because I've got. Otherwise, you can.
All right.
I prepared
Otherwise,
the
I'll ruin your perfectly crafted
Yes.
jokes, your perfectly timed puns. All right.
I'm gonna try to sound like you with the same intonation. Okay, are we ready? Why does it says add to broadcast? Whatever. Okay.
I love recording the Navbar. This is fun. This is definitely highlight of my week. Let's do it.
Sink sips for sure.
Sink sips.
Do you exhale before you talk?
You exhale with the words. Each word lets out a little bit of air.
Okay, you're going to be blown away. Welcome to the Navbar, a podcast where we help you navigate the web and raise the bar of your content creation. My name is John Myers. I'm a developer advocate from Superbase.
And I'm Simon Vrashliotis, a designer, developer, and content creator from Sydney, Australia.
From Sydney, Australia.
Sydney.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this episode, I am going to talk about Astro. Astro is a web framework for building fast, content-focused websites, as the websites say. And I've been using it quite a bit recently, and honestly, I think it's been an amazing piece of technology worth telling you about. So I'm here to tell Mr. John Myers from Superbase about Astro.
Well, I have never, ever used Astro. It's been on my list of things to try out, things to check out. And so I am extremely excited to hear why you have been raving about it and what the industry thinks is so cool about Astro, because it sounds like it's pretty great.
Yeah, I thought I'd just tell you first of all, what is Astro? And if you hear a lot of buzz around it lately, it's because it went into 1.0 stable version about 2 months ago. I think August 9th was when they launched. It's been in the making for like a year and a half at least. I remember hearing Chris Coyer on the Shop Talk Show podcast raving about Astro like very, very early on. And that's actually shout out, Chris. I know you're not listening, but shout out, Chris. You're the reason I've looked into Astro, because Chris is very pragmatic and have a very good approach about things really helping you get your job done well. And he knows the web very thoroughly. So like coming from him, I was like, yeah, that resonates with me and I've got to check it out. So Astro is a static site generator. So that doesn't tell you much. Basically, a static site generator generates HTML static pages and ships no JavaScript by default. So that's the approach. It doesn't sound groundbreaking because there's lots of other options, but we'll see what makes it different. So Astro is definitely leaning towards building websites rather than web applications, although it's very capable in that regard. But things like blogs, portfolios, documentation sites, anything that some people call brochure read-only sites, Astro is incredibly good at. As opposed to, it's good at because it optimizes for that context. Content-heavy sites without a lot of interaction. As opposed to things like admin dashboards, or if you build a social network, or something like Jira, where there's lots of people creating content and updates in real time.
That's okay. Whatever was used to build Jira was also not very good at being used to build Jira. So, ooh, shots fired.
So yeah, there's that how do you say? There's that spectrum from website, web app, and Astro is technically capable of doing the full thing. You could say Astro is going to be my go-to framework for any type of application, and it's capable. You'll see as we talk about it. But something I really like and respect is Astro is quite honest, saying, "Hey, a lot of the benefits and the performance and the greatness of Astro is because we decided to cater for more like sites, websites with like read-only stuff. So while it's capable of doing everything, you could say that Next.js, especially with the static site generation, is a competitor of Astro. But in the Astro docs, they say, hey, if you know you're building a very rich interactive application, check out Next.js. It's really good at doing that. And they're not trying to say we can do everything, forget everything else, and I really respect that. So what separates Astro from the rest, I'd say, is it uses these Astro components, which is basically HTML. So any valid HTML is a valid Astro component, but it comes with the JSX-like syntax. But in fact, simpler. So things, JS, if you don't know, JSX is like React's it's not a template language, but it's a way to write HTML-looking things that kind of compiles to JavaScript. And it makes you feel like you're writing HTML inside of your JavaScript. Astro components, you literally write HTML, but then you can have props that you pass, and you can have curlies, and inside have a JavaScript expression and do all the great things that comes with JSX. So why it's great, JSX is, to me at least, the best way to compose UI components together, to have like a sidebar where you pass a title and some content as children, and just, composing UI components with different props. A lot of time you want to build a site and you pick React just because JSX is so nice to do UI component composition. And Astro gives you that, and you'll see soon much more. But things, when I say JSX but simpler, for example, you don't have to use class name like in JSX. You can just use class. You don't have to export a function that returns a chunk of JSX. You just write the JSX. So it's basically HTML with JSX superpowers. And that by itself already brings a super easy and nice developer experience. And it's like literally just scratching the surface.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I think like that layout was what kind of drove me to learning React, and what I really liked about React was being able to write like HTML-like stuff and using something that was like similar to a templating language, and gave me those additional things like being able to write JavaScript within my HTML kind of.
Yep.
But yeah, the sticking point was all of that extra stuff that you need to know, or you need to learn, or you need to keep in your head, like using class name instead of class, and functions, but the functions can only return one root element, and all of these things that, like, as a beginner developer, when you're learning that framework, just like hold you up from being productive and hold you up from learning what's actually cool about React, because you need to kind of just understand all of these exceptions or these things that you just have to do just because JSX is the way that JSX is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's one of the things that, and they say it quite nice on the docs. It's like it lowers the barrier to entry and kind of meets you where you're at. But yeah, just think of, like, I know sometimes I started learning React and was building apps, and then I was working on a PHP, like a craft CMS website that uses Twig as the templating engine. And Twig is like super simple, and you can just get stuff from the database and do loops, and like it's really great. But when you want to start creating like a modal element that has multiple props for like size and color and stuff, it becomes really hard because there's not really, although I think it's coming, but there's not really like a component sort of entity. It's more like you can have a partial or an include that kind of takes some parameters and you can pass data, but it feels convoluted. Once you've used JSX, we literally add an attribute for size and you say large, and then the component reads that thing and kind of like, just it turns out React or JSX is still amazing even if you don't need any of the reactivity and state and hooks and all of that. And that's pretty much what Astro components are.
Nice.
Another thing that Astro is, it's server first. And by what I mean, it kind of brings that simplicity of the good old days. I don't know if you worked with PHP or Rails, or you have a template, and because it runs on the server and then it gets built into HTML page, you can do stuff with the database or send an email or do stuff directly from that template. And Astro brings that, where Remix has the same kind of similarity, where you can do server stuff directly in the same page, and then you can use that, you can fetch data from a database and then you can display it in the page. But as opposed to Remix, which kind of hydrates the client. I don't know exactly how it works, but Astro is like, no, we're going to do it at build time. So even if you have CMS, we're going to await, fetch data. You can use fetch, and then you get that data and you can set some variables, whatever. And then you use that in your page and it generates a HTML page at that very moment. And so, you build a real static site, but you have the full power. And of course, if you needed to fetch data in real time, when the user visits the page, you can enable this SSR approach, where it kind of complicates things a bit, where you need to host it in a place that is capable of handling that. But the default behavior is just like build static pages. And if you want to grab data from your file system or from an API or from anything, just do it and then build a page with whatever came at that moment where you were building the page.
Right. So this would be similar to like that building the static side of it would be similar to something like get static props in Next.js, for example.
Yes.
If you're familiar with that. And then this server side rendering aspect of it would be similar to using something like get server side props in Next.js. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. And actually, I don't think we're going to touch on that, but they have some sort of APIs very similar where you can do get static props and get static paths to in certain situations. But for the majority of what you do, you literally grab some data, display it, and like it feels like working in HTML, but having the superpower of JavaScript and server stuff.
Nice.
And one thing that it's different is that it has no client hydration by default, so it doesn't ship any JavaScript. If you work in a Next.js app and you build a static site, it's super fast and snappy. But if you inspect with the DevTools, it's going to load a fairly not neglectable amount of JavaScript, runtime JavaScript, for stuff like client-side navigation and stuff. And with Astro, the idea is like you ship zero JavaScript unless you need to. So that means it's not a SPA where you're going to have client-side single-page application where you can navigate between pages without refreshing the page. It's a multi-page app. It's like more like a traditional approach. But turns out if you build a really lean, fast HTML site, the page change feels almost instant anyway. So the trade-off is kind of, again, if you want to build an app that feels where you completely embedded and you never leave the shell, that's maybe where you want to use something like Next.js. But yeah, the for building sites, Astro is amazing.
Awesome. So then if you do actually like write any JavaScript, like you were saying, you have this kind of JSX like templating like
Yeah.
language. So any JavaScript syntax that you write in there, is that all run either at build time or during that server render, and just turned into HTML with no JavaScript, and then that's what comes across the wire from the server?
That's the default behavior, yes.
Cool.
We'll see soon that you can actually use React, the real React. You can use Vue, Svelte, Solid, Lit, anything almost that you can think of. And it will actually, by default, generate just HTML. So imagine you're using React without any need for state. If you were using, like, it's going to use that as your templating language and then spit out pure HTML with zero JavaScript. And then if you need state, you can, there's this little attribute, I was going to talk about it later, where you say client load, and it's going to load in the client the JavaScript you need to enable your use state hook to work. And it's fantastic.
Very cool. Okay. So what would you say this compares to in terms of other things that are available out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it kind of compares to nothing because it has that new in the middle approach. So it has the simplicity of just building HTML sites. So there's static site generators that are really good at doing this already. If you haven't tried 11t, it's a great example. 11t is saying, hey, we're not an application framework. We like a set of tools to build static pages. And we use JavaScript to make it super easy. And you can use Markdown, you can use Liquid, you can use Twig, like maybe not Twig, but you can use lots of different templating languages. Or something like Jekyll or Middleman. Middleman is like a PHP static site generator. I think Jekyll is a Ruby one. But
I think Jekyll was the first one, right?
Yeah.
Jekyll was, I think, written by, is it the person who's now at Redwood JS? Was it Tom?
Yeah, that's possible. I'm not sure, but it's what led to GitHub pages. That, like, initially, GitHub pages, I think, were there to host, like if you build a Jekyll site, it would automatically deploy to GitHub pages without you having to do any setup. But the idea is like you use programming tools to generate static pages. And so 11t is like a more JavaScript-y approach to this problem space. And Astro is also doing that. But it does that with the almost Next.js-like user experience because you can use JSX. And like I said before, you can actually use React. So you could use literally, if you work with Next.js, you use Astro by using React and you're going to be like right away at home. But if you try, I would really recommend you try the Astro component because it doesn't take anything it's literally JSX without some of the quirks, as long as you're not trying to use state and do like advanced stuff. So it supports React, it supports Vue, Svelte, Solid, Alpine, and you get the idea. But the best part, like I mentioned before, is it's going to generate HTML only, even if you use these frameworks, unless you say, hey, I want some JavaScript on the client, please load, and then you explicitly say client load on your component to say, hey, opt out of this no JavaScript ever, and then let me do the thing I want to do.
That's awesome. So yeah, I think this is where I had a little bit of a misaligned understanding of Astro, because I thought it was something where I didn't really understand what it was. I thought that it wrapped around you writing it in a different language, so Vue or React or something like that. And I thought maybe it was just giving you some like server-side convenience or some kind of static building stuff, which it sounds like it can do. I think the piece that I was missing is I didn't understand that Astro itself was its own like flavor of language or framework or whatever, where you could write your entire application in just Astro. Using JSX like syntax, but not writing in React or Vue or Solid or anything like that. So that's cool that you have that option to use those, and that's actually really interesting what you're saying, that it like you can run like you can create a React component or whatever writing just React, but then unless you actively opt into that client-side hydration, it's going to do all of that, like rendering this on the server and building up the HTML that will be displayed. So you could choose to write your stuff entirely in React, but then have an Astro HTML only site that spat out the other side.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so
Okay.
just like we flipped our introductions at the start, I feel like Astro flips the whole approach compared to something like Next.js. And again, it's not really competition, they're different frameworks, but Astro has that progressive enhancement approach where by default, you're going to build a completely static HTML site without any JavaScript. And then if you need to, you're going to opt in to get some JavaScript framework where you can do a carousel or like a full-blown application like you build with React or Vue. Where Next.js is like, hey, we're an application framework, but if you want just a static site, there's ways. Don't use get server-side props. Don't respect these few things, and we're going to build a static site for you. But it's like Astro is literally no, we're a website builder, and then if you want to crank it up, we have pathways to make it more interactive, which I really like, and I think again, like they say in the docs, for most documentation sites, blogs, portfolio, personal website, it makes so much more sense to approach it like this, and then have what we'll discuss in a bit, a little component island with interactivity within the page, instead of having the entire thing being a single page app with client-side navigation for a 3-post blog. Speaking of that, my blog is built with Next.js and is a single page application with there's routes and stuff, but like it takes over the client-side navigation and it does all the stuff. But I haven't checked, and I'm sure it loads something like about 400 or 500 kilobytes of JavaScript to do that.
Yeah, I'm getting that itchy feeling, that familiar feeling of it's time to rebuild my blog in something new. It's time to try out Astro. So tell me, like this idea of building HTML and not shipping JavaScript by default and all of those things. Why is this good?
Well, the first obvious, or maybe not obvious, but thing that inherit from that is it's super fast. Like, shipping no JavaScript at all unless you need some. And so therefore you're going to have like the less code you send, probably the better. Like even if you write super performant code, if you add code, it just makes more things to download for the user. I mentioned already, like the most other static site generators that do client-side routing have some JavaScript that they have to load on the client to hydrate the client and then take over. But another thing that is great about Astro is it's super simple. It's great for beginners. If you know HTML and CSS, people make a career of taking Figma designs and building HTML and CSS sites, and then maybe implement it in a CMS like a WordPress theme or any other sort of dynamic implementation. And if you have that skill set already, you're right at home with Astro immediately. And then, but it also is very refreshing for seasoned devs, because if you're really good with React and like really modern technologies, you instantly recognize the power of using Astro components or even staying in your lane of framework of choice, but having that generate static HTML without even having to think about anything. So it feels immediately familiar no matter where you come from. Like I said, I recently, this week, actually onboarded a small team at ThinkMill. Tom is in the comments and in the stream watching live. He's part of that team. We started a new Astro project, and so far, like it's only been 2 days, but team members have been immediately comfortable and honestly, I think quite impressed and pleased with the whole, I can find my way around. This is like at home. I feel comfortable here. I know you just create a folder with a name and you put a markdown file, and this is going to be the URL, and it's super, like it's simple, elegant, and it lets you get stuff done really quickly.
Yeah, I feel like anytime I see a code snippet of someone tweeting about Astro, it's always just that super, super simple thing where they've just got like, it's a markdown file and they just have the markdown syntax at the top showing
front matter,
like the front matter. Yeah, and then that's just automatically available in the Astro component, and then they just it's so easy to just look at that and pass exactly what's going on, understand it completely. So yeah, I've had that feeling even just from looking at code snippets in tweets.
Yeah, so the whole approach is to make JavaScript available in the file, they use that front matter thing. So, like in Remix, you would have a loader or an action, which is how you can do server-side stuff. And Astro kind of has that triple dashes separator, which is called the front matter. And inside of that is JavaScript. Like you can import node modules, you can fetch data, you can transform stuff, you can send an email, do whatever you want. Although to send an email, you need like the SSR approach. But to be able to do stuff, you use these triple dashes. And that's also how you receive props. So when you write a Astro component that looks like React, you pass the props the exact same way. You pass attributes, and you can use curlies for JavaScript or just a string. And then to receive them on the component that you build inside the front matter, you just receive them from astro.props. So you can go const title description children equals astro.props. You destructure that like this. That's it. And then you can use them in the component in the HTML below.
That is so cool.
You don't export a function that receives the arguments. You just get them in the front matter.
That's so cool. And then it's keeping like consistency between like the different file types that you might be using. Like that's really cool that like that is a concept that comes from Markdown, is that idea of having front matter and having the 3 dashes. So reusing that concept and being like, well, why don't we do exactly the same thing if we're dealing with any kind of JavaScript or JSX component or Astro component? That's really cool way to approach that.
The site we're building currently, we started this week, uses Markdown or MDX and Astro components, and every file starts with the front matter that looks the same, like you said. So yes, this Astro, like the feeling is it meets you where you're at. Like if you're good with Vue or Svelte, you can use that. If you like HTML, you probably like Astro components immediately. If you like Markdown, use Markdown. MDX, you bet, you can use that. And it actually has syntax highlighting out of the box for code blocks, which is amazing. Usually you have to do a lot of stuff where you have to install Prism and Rehype and like some packages to make it work. It's there out of the box. And it's really this kind of vibe of BYO, bring your own framework, where you bring along what you're comfortable with. And we haven't talked about this concept of component island architecture, but you can even, as silly as it sounds, you could use Svelte, Vue, and React on the same page and have 3 little bits of interactivity that are independent from each other, and the rest of the page static. And yeah, it's really quite cool to work with.
It's the promise of micro front ends or whatever.
Yeah.
But now it's been rebranded as island architecture so that no one has the associated negative idea of micro front ends. Very cool.
I was talking with Jed Watson, which is the co-founder at ThinkMill, and he said that was actually a really smart thing to do for people that went into this micro front end and they have like lots of frameworks or legacy stuff. And then they're like, are you telling me I can have a page that takes this legacy stuff and makes them work together elegantly? It's almost like a backing out of tech debt by using multiple frameworks in the same page instead of having separate apps that use different frameworks that you're like, are we going to have to rebuild all this in the same stack so it works together? You can actually pull these legacy stacks in the same page. And
yeah,
cool
I think basically any tech company that's been around for longer than like 5 years would probably massively benefit from that idea, and just love the idea of being able to, not just rewrite everything in just React or rewrite everything in just Vue, because they have pieces of all stuff all over the place from trying out different things and different people having opinions on what was the best option at the time.
At the time, yes.
Yeah.
You can carve the timeline based on the... Yeah, even like your own project. I looked at something I built in 2016 and it was using Jade, which became Pug later, and then Stylus and Gulp and all these things. That was like the bee's knees. I had that Actually, I was building something similar to what Astro does, which is like a set of tools to build static HTML pages. But yeah, you look at this and you're like, it's still used, but it's definitely not the stack I would start a new project with. Speaking of being very modern and recent, Astro has the benefits of taking the best ideas out of different frameworks that came in the past decade or so. JSX from React being one of them. It also takes inspiration from Vue. If you've worked with Vue.js, they have this single file component approach where you have a script with JavaScript and then a template with HTML and then styles with CSS. And At the core, the Astro component is exactly that. The front matter at the top is the JavaScript. The HTML is literally HTML. You don't even have to have a template. You just write, you could paste any HTML and that's your component. But where you can use JSX like syntax. And then I don't use it myself at all, but if you have a style block at the bottom, it will automatically scope this style by adding a unique string to every. So you can just go P color red, and you don't have to worry about all the paragraph tags in all your site becoming red. It's just within that component. So it kind of creates these scoped classes for you. You know why I'm not using this, because I use Tailwind CSS on everything I do. So then I don't really need that scoping approach, but it's there. Like, and again, that's an idea shared between Svelte and Vue to have this. Oh, if we had styles here, chances are we don't want them to leak out, so let's scope them. I think in Vue, at least before you head to opt in with the scoped attributes to make them scoped. But anyway, yeah, it takes all these great ideas. And what I like about the JSX syntax is it strips out, you don't need hooks, refs, keys, fragments, all these things that trip up beginners in React, because it's not JSX, it's like HTML that takes the really good paradigms of JSX, like how you pass props and receive them, and how you can use JavaScript expressions anywhere you need.
Nice. Yeah, I like this like next iteration of frameworks that we're experiencing at the moment, where like I guess the previous iteration was battling it out between like I don't know, I'd say Angular, Vue and React, maybe, unless there's something I'm forgetting there. But like those three
Ember.
were kind of battling it. Ember, yeah, and they were kind of battling it out to get us to the point that we're at now, where it's like, okay, components are a good idea. Breaking up your UI into these separate components that represent different parts of your application, that makes sense, and it's a good way to develop. And now we have this next iteration where they get to take all of the things that we learnt by, like, you know, React went through a lot of iterations to get to the point that it's at now. And so with each of those iterations comes some extra baggage or things that need to be done in a complicated way to get around some other decisions that were made earlier on. So it's really nice that these new iterations can take all of the learnings of getting us to this point and all of the things that work about that, but then do it in a much more simple way, in a much more lean way, without all of that baggage of learning.
Totally.
Up to this point.
It's funny because it's a developer experience baggage and a user experience baggage, so you kind of strip it out on both ends. I think that's what sold me hearing Chris Coyer talk about it. He was like, the industry, designers and developers have completely agreed that building components that are composable and can receive parameters is the way to build user interfaces. Like there's no going back to, oh no, let's think of everything as a page, and like this component model is here to stay. And he was saying, like Chris was saying, I want to build static sites. I don't necessarily build a reactive app, but I want to use this component model and compose stuff. And this Astro components is exactly that solution. It takes the beauty of composing components with JSX, but like in a literally building static templates, which is amazing. And Astro, like I've still barely scratched the surface, and even at the end of the podcast, it will still be the case. But in a nutshell, it covers everything you need. The first thing, like the flagship to me, is that UI components with props that you get with the Astro components out of the box. But it also handles file-based routing. So if you put a folder with about, and then a file called me.astro or .md or .svelte or React or anything, or not React, .jsx, it will create that /about/me route for you. So again, people love to make fun of PHP, and the JavaScript world for the last 10 years has tried to recreate this beauty of PHP where you make a folder and that's the route, and then you get data from the database and display it. And this is kind of like going back to this, like the simplicity. You got routes, you got components. It gives you a build process /dev server, bundling, optimizations, all the good stuff. For example, I use Tailwind CSS, and Tailwind is a post CSS plugin, so it kind of needs to be processed through post CSS. You bet the build tool handles post CSS, so you just create your Tailwind project, have a post CSS config file auto-generated, and you have nothing to do. It's gonna take care of it. But you can also do data fetching, like we mentioned. You can go in the front matter of a static page. You can say, const data equals await fetch, and then you fetch from a GraphQL API or from the WordPress API, from JSON, like anything you want, from Notion API. You get all of that, and you await it in the front matter, and then when it's ready to build the page. And because it's at build time, it doesn't, even if you're very slow, you wouldn't have to have the KV storage cache. Like, it's literally, whenever you're ready, give me the data and let's build that page, and then it's a static page.
Yeah, I was going to make the same joke that, yeah, we don't need a whole caching layer with Cloudflare and KV storage unless we want to be really, really, really nice to the robots and not make them sit around waiting for our Notion request.
That's true. Astro also has a huge ecosystem of integration. So things like something that's great about Next.js is the image component that gives you like lazy loading, auto source sets, attributes, resizing, cropping, all that stuff. You bet there's an extension for that. If you want a sitemap or RSS feed or all these things, SEO tags, like you can do it manually, but someone has already built a really nice comprehensive extension that does just that. It's literally an Astro component with all the props that to generate the correct XML feed or sitemap or whatever you need. If you want to have third-party scripts on your project, like Google, the Facebook pixel or like the GA, like when you work with the marketing team, very often they want to put all this tracking thing to do the click attribution for track people where they came from. You can use the Google Tag Manager or stuff like this, which kind of slows your site. And a new modern approach, I haven't used it myself, but I've heard of it, is called Party Town. It's like the third party can have their party in that thing. That is not, yes, it's a great name. It's not going to affect the performance too much. And of course, there's a Party Town integration. There's a Tailwind CSS integration, but I prefer to install it myself because setting up Tailwind, if you know how it works, takes 2 minutes. And then I like that if Tailwind, and I know Tailwind release a lot of stuff, like you don't have to wait for the integration to update to the new version before you can use it. But yeah, ecosystem community is great. But perhaps one of the most important and underrated approach is the documentation is absolutely epic. There's really good examples. The whole thing speaks in simple terms. It has a good philosophy. Like I said before, they say, why Astro? But also, why not Astro? And they literally, there's a call out. They're not hiding it in the fine print. It's like a big purple call out that says, if you're building a Jira-like or Facebook-like social network, check out Next.js. It's a really good option. I respect that, like I said at the start. Yeah, that's already a lot of great things. But saying all that, I don't think I've outlined the actual key features. Well, I kind of have, but maybe I want to make a little summary of it. From what I've said, what do you think is a key feature of Astro, coming from a no experience at all?
I think it sounds like the key feature is like allowing you to do what is familiar to you, but then turning it into the most performant version of that, or the most like stripped back version that is just raw HTML. But then also giving you the ability to just enable anything that you need to make it. To give you that JavaScript client side to do anything that you want. So whatever you're familiar with, whatever way you want to build it, you can build it that way, and then it's kind of coming out in a consistent way on the other end. That sounds like the key feature to me.
Yep. Yeah, so I just literally thought, reading the comments, thought of an exact scenario that happened to me. I tried to use Astro with Keystone.js. And so Keystone.js generates a GraphQL API. So arguably using a GraphQL API when you could just fetch data directly with the database is like almost like an extra layer. But you go in the front matter, you use fetch. You can fetch a GraphQL. It's just a post request, and then you need to pass a few headers like the content type, application /JSON or GraphQL. Anyway, you do the GraphQL fetch, you pass your query, and then you have it, and then you display it. And Keystone has that really advanced document field, which is kind of like a content block long form story builder where you can have custom advanced components, and then it stores everything as like a JSON object of very structured data. So it's a way to have multiple blocks that makes a lot of sense for the editors. But then as a front-end dev, you can use the JSON structure. It's not just like a big HTML with classes and inline styles like old school WordPress would do. When someone would highlight a text and make it blue, it would go style, color, blue, and it's just one block of markup. You can't do anything. It gives you this very advanced JSON stuff. But the problem, it's not a problem, but it means that you need to write quite a bit of code to parse and interpret each custom block to render it like you want. The good news is Keystone also ships a renderer for the document field as a React component. So you import a renderer and it's going to all the default blocks like strong, block quote, image, anything. It's going to have the right formatting to read that JSON and spit it out like you want. So when you use these two together, it's fantastic. But then I was like, but I'm in Astro. Like, how is the React component going to work? And then it hit me. I was like, I can just use a React component for that thing. And I literally have my static page, and I imported the renderer from Keystone to parse and interpret this massive blob of JSON. And it spit out as static HTML with zero JavaScript. And I had my page with like a well-crafted blog post built with GraphQL and a React renderer just generated in static HTML. And I was like, wow, holy crap, like this is amazing. Like you can dial it up to 11 and still build a simple thing, which is super cool.
It sounds like the horrible file that you stumble upon at the enterprise company that you work for that has like all of the bits glued together. So it's like, like Backbone is loading in Rails and Rails is loading in React and all of these things. Like there's just this glue layer that you stumble upon. You're like, oh God, this is actually how this application works. But the difference is not all of that is being sent to the client. Not all of that is like slowing down the application. What's coming out the other side that the client is actually loading is just HTML.
Yes.
It's very cool.
And also when you use these different technologies, it creates these little isolated islands. They call it like you have a sea of HTML and you have little islands of interactivity in there, and they're self-sufficient and they're not leaking out or anything. But going back to the key features I was going to mention, I've said the components many times, Astro components. But if that's your flavor, it supports TypeScript out of the box. And if you spin up the demo, they have a few demos like a blog or a portfolio site. They show you how to build an Astro component where you define the type and then you receive the props and you annotate them with the type just defined. And I was like, that's actually what sold me on TypeScript. And then I used it in my Pro Tailwind course because it's kind of is cleaner than using React prop types where you do kind of the same, but in a somewhat foreign syntax. Like you open the first Astro component you've ever seen and it says type, title equals string, age equals number. And then it destructures title and age from Astro props and it types it as like component props, whatever you named it. And then you have the TypeScript auto-completion and it yells at you if you pass a string for the age or if you forget to pass the age. And it just bundles all of this in a static HTML file where you haven't touched anything or tsconfig or anything. It just works with TypeScript out of the box. That's sweet.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Another thing I've kind of mentioned is MDX support with the code syntax highlighting is super cool. It's not technically part of the core, but they have this extension that you can either install manually and then you have to change your config, but they also have this Astro add commands from the CLI. And it's basically it's gonna install the package and update your config file and do the few steps you should do manually. And when you do so, it's very polite. We are going with Tom through that yesterday, and it says, "Hey, we need to install the MDX blah 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 extension. Are you okay with that?" And you say yes. And then you say, "Hey, we're just gonna add this line to your config file. Sweet." And you're like, "Yes." And it does the changes, but it just tells you what it does, and it feels really nice.
That's awesome. And I feel like that's probably the thing that always stops me from rebuilding, well, thankfully stops me from rebuilding my personal site constantly, is how much work I had to put into getting all of the syntax highlighting like tweaked just right and everything was working, and I just don't want to go through that again. So
Yeah.
having it included out of the box would,
I think
I'm gonna rebuild it. I'm gonna rebuild my blog. I'm doing it after this call. Once we finish this episode, I'm gonna go and rebuild johnmyers.io with Astro.
and then you can pivot the navbar site. Or if you need more streams, or you just compare two options. But I literally opted out of showing code example in my blog because I couldn't get the syntax highlighting like I wanted. And then for my Pro Tailwind workshop, so imagine I'm building a workshop. My focus is on the challenges and the story. And I'm like, quickly, I need to spin up like a documentation page. And it just highlighted it beautifully. I could select my Night Owl theme from Sarah Drasner, and just like it worked. And I was like, this is it looks so good. And I had literally Astro add MDX or at MDX at Astro/MDX, whatever. Bang, it's working out of the box, which was amazing. Another key feature is that you can read files from the file system with a helper called Astro.glob. So glob, if you don't know, a glob is like a kind of string with some wildcard characters like stars for. So you can say src/star.md, and it's going to take any file in that src folder with the extension .md. And then if you want multiple folder depth, you can do */star.md. And so basically you go await astro.glob and you pass whatever string of the things it should look at. And you store that in a data or whatever variable. And then const data equals await astroglob / whatever /md. And then it's going to have an array of the MD files in that directory. So you can create a blog, you go post directory, and then have lots of markdown files. And then instead of, I've done that in Next.js, you need to use the fs file system package from Node and go fs.read file sync dir. Like there's this whole syntax to be able to read from your file system. Astro.glob does that, and then you don't have to do like turn it into there's no steps. You just get this, and then you can map over it because it's JSX. You can go post that map post, and then you output something. Again, you don't need the key. You don't need all this knowledge specific to React. You just get data and display it, and that's really nice. And this leads us to I think looking at the Astro docs, it looks like the flagship feature is Astro Islands, and that's this concept of component islands where you have an interactive UI component somewhere within the static page. And the cool thing is if you have a blog post and then you want a carousel somewhere, something that needs JavaScript, but it's like scrollable down. I haven't tried it, but I'm pretty sure because the docs say that it will only load when it appears in view. So if someone visits that page and it's not in the viewport, it's not going to load anything until it lazy loads when it enters in view.
That's so cool. So yeah, so if you did want to have, your 5 different frameworks of choice throughout your legacy application, even if they're all on the same page, if they're like, below the fold or you need to scroll down to get to them, you're not actually loading in all of those bits to show that component. So if you did have like, an interactive React component that was embedded down the bottom of your page, like maybe something complex like a counter, and you click it and it increases the number of counts, something complex like that. It wouldn't actually load any of the React-y stuff until you got close enough to the viewport that it was actually worthwhile fetching that data. Right. That makes a huge difference to the amount of stuff that the user needs to download to see the start of your blog or the start of your documentation page or something like that.
Yeah, so again, it's like optimizing everything for like static first and time to interactive. And I haven't myself used that too much, although in my workshop, I just wanted, in my workshop, I tried to tell a story and challenge the users a bit. And there's like, it's almost like a blog post for each challenge. And in one of them, I asked a question, and then instead of just showing the answer, I was like, think about it, and when you're ready, toggle down the little accordion thing. And it's a markdown file, but for the accordion, I've used headless UI. I forgot how it's called. Disclosure, I think it's like it's a like reveal, show and hide thing. And then I added a transition component from headless UI as well, so it's a nice little animated reveal. And I haven't actually checked the code, but it literally, I have this markdown file, and in the middle of the post, I have this interactive React and headless UI component. And I'm pretty sure that it only loads it only loads the JavaScript to toggle the state open close when it enters in view.
That's awesome.
And initially it didn't work because I forgot to go client load, so it's rendered a static only version, so it didn't toggle, and I was like, oh, what's broken? And then I realized, no, you have to, if you want JavaScript on the client, you have to explicitly opt in, and then it worked. And I was like, yeah, that's you can't accidentally load a bunch of JavaScript, because you have to willingly say, hey, Astro, I know your philosophy, but hear me out. I need this here. And you negotiate with it, and then it brings it.
The negotiation is quite brief. You just write client : load, and Astro goes, yeah, all right, I give in.
But yeah, I say what I find funny is it sounds like it's the flagship thing, like the website is the first thing it prints in your face, like component island architecture. And I haven't really used any of that, and I have still hundreds of reasons why Astro is absolutely incredible and you should try use it. So you can't see it here, but in my notes on screen, I have this, and John can see in the note, I've got this example where it's showing, it's import my React component from blah, 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 JSX, so it's a React component. And then it uses it, my React component, and this is 100% HTML, no JavaScript. But then if you need the interactive state, like my dropdown needed to actually open, you just add this client column load attribute, and it's going to load it. And there's client only, there's client lazy, maybe that's the lazy one that makes it lazy load. There's a bunch of different sort of loading mechanism you can do. Look at the docs. I haven't used that much.
That's really cool. So the rest of everything else, like even though you have a dynamic thing, it doesn't mean that the whole application has to be dynamic or the whole page has to be dynamic now. You still get that static HTML for everything else, and just the one component that you've like flagged as being a client-side, like requiring client-side JavaScript, that one component in isolation can be interactive.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And it would
cool.
be okay that if further down you had another demo built with Svelte and another, like it's just everything is that own little contained thing that only loads when it detects that it needs to. And yeah, it's really cool. Awesome. I always think of, if you know Josh Como, he's like a very talented developer, teacher, illustrator, all the things you can imagine that are useful when you want to build your own business. And he's done so very successfully. But his blog posts are full of really cool interactive examples. And I'm sure you could build something like when you switch from React or Next to something like 11t, that's typically where it becomes much harder to have an interactive React component somewhere in one page, although you can do it, I know. But yeah, with Astro, I feel like you would literally just plop your React component, like copy and paste from Next into that Astro project and use that React component. And technically, if you load it correctly with the correct attribute, you should have a static page. And when that cool demo appears in the post, that's when it loads. And yeah, that's super cool.
Nice.
I think I've said all the things I want to say about Astro itself, although there's much more. Check the docs. But I thought I would share my experience with it because I've used it for the last 2 months. And I'm very enthusiastic. I'm an enthusiastic person. The other day we had a meeting and I said, I'm really excited. And someone, Matt Barron, said, dude, you're excited about everything. And he wasn't wrong. I'll give you that point. But yeah, there's something really special, I think.
I'm extra excited. Simon is extra excited about Astro.
So first thing first, I've been running my Pro Tailwind workshops on Astro. I've delivered 3 workshops, and the first one, I built a site with Next.js I call that the companion site. So It's a site that explains today's workshop, timetable, and then challenges intros. And then there's a before, starting points, solution, links, and stuff. And I was using Next.js and then Markdown to do the challenge blog post type. It worked great. There was like a bit more complexity for syntax highlighting in Markdown and fetching all the files inside a challenges folder to kind of make a grid list, stuff like this. And then I built the second one. I thought that's when I discovered Astro between the first and second workshop. The logical way would have been to duplicate my next site and change a few things to support the next workshop. But I thought, oh, let's rebuild it in Astro. Just to see. And because it's JSX, I ported the header, the footer, the components, just worked out of the box. It worked with Tailwind. That was great. It worked with Markdown. The syntax highlighting worked. I literally removed a whole lot of code, like the whole file system read, and I removed a lot of code, and it still worked really well.
Did you move the React components across and leave them as React components, or did you rename them as Astro
No, I actually
components?
changed. I could have done that, but actually that would have not even been a penalized thing because it still generates just HTML. But I just try to buy into these Astro components to learn them. And very quickly, like I found, like if I copy something from Tailwind Play in HTML, I don't have to change all the class to class name and fill rule to like fill dash rule on an SVG to fill capital R rule. Like it's just the exact same syntax. And that thing happened where I wanted an interactive component, and I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. I was using headless UI for the drop down, and that's when I realized these component islands. So literally everything worked really, really well. But the cool thing is I don't just power the companion site. I also power the workshop challenge repo where people do the code challenges in React. It's also an Astro site. And you might say, what's the point? Why not just use Next.js there? And something that I came to realize is the examples I build, I could build the exact same example with Svelte or Vue. And I could technically, it's hard because we have groups of 4 in challenges, but I could say each group, hey, if you're a team of Svelte developers, just change the extension from JSX to that Svelte and write Svelte and it's going to work. Or change it to that Vue and do the Vue file. Because I had enabled all the extensions for different frameworks, all different islands, people could technically do that. I ended up just doing the workshops in React, but what I am going to do now is replicate the buttons and models that we did in the workshop, and I'm going to rebuild them in all the different flavors of components, because the point I'm trying to demonstrate is what I'm teaching is Tailwind CSS and styling patterns, and it's completely framework agnostic. And the last thing I want is people say, oh, that's cool, but I don't really want to use React, and it feels like you need React to do these things. I say, no. We're going to have the styling in one file, and then each component is going to consume the same styles, and literally nothing changes in the styling approach. All that changes is how you pass it as a prop or how you get the style to stick to the components based on the framework. So I thought awesome. it was hard to get people work on different files during the workshop, but to drive a point home and say, hey, if the workshop was longer, I'd say, you know what, we're going to just duplicate this component and change the extension and refactor it to a Svelte components, and we're not going to touch any of the styles, and it still works. So my whole philosophy is to try as framework agnostic as I can when I teach Tailwind. And Astro is a real tool in that regard, because it's like, use whatever you want. If you don't need any interactivity, just you can use Astro component, but you can use whatever you think works. So it's a good way to outline this.
That's cool.
Clutch. Yeah.
This is making me think maybe we should rebuild the not yet released navbar website in Astro, which I feel like was maybe something that you mentioned at the start, like, hey, maybe you should use Astro for this.
I certainly did. I was very early in my journey, but I was like, nah, man, Remix is a very good choice as well. But out of curiosity, if you want to try, I guarantee you'd have a good time of like just all the React stuff would work. Obviously the loaders and actions and stuff wouldn't, but you could move that to front matter thing, and then depending on if you want to fetch at what's the time, like at visit time, browse time, I don't know, I forgot how it's called right now. If you want to do that build time, like you could skip a whole lot of like KV storage and all that stuff. But if you want to do it like Remix does, just like when the request happens and then the code runs of the server, you can enable the SSR mode, which means you need to host it like it's edge ready. You can host it on the edge, all the places that a Remix app would work. Like you said before, they have adapters for Deno, sorry, I don't know how you say that. Cloudflare
Deno.
workers, yeah. I love that it's capable of doing the advanced stuff, but it starts with like, just assume we're building a simple site. Until proven wrong, we're going to do everything to make it as simple and dumb and fast as we can. And
Nice.
the other place I've used it, like I mentioned, is with ThinkMill. We started this project. It's a very short-lived timeline. We have like 4 weeks to build a website. And we were kind of asked, hey, we don't really care too much what tech you use, like something that because we don't have a design, we don't have a content really, like we have to figure out all these things in parallel. So the whole idea is like whatever helps us prototype together on the thing that lives in a browser somewhere. And I was like, Astro and Tailwind are two tools that Tailwind lets you prototype the styles in the browser. And then I feel like Astro lets you prototype the content. Like you just throw folders and markdown files and move them around and it changes the routes. And we at day 3 or 4 today, and the first designs just landed. But we already have like this clickable prototype thing with all the content structures and the example of case studies and blog posts and stuff. And it's super cool. And I think the whole team kind of enjoys the rapid iteration without any complexity, like being like out of control and unnecessary.
Nice. That sounds very cool. Well, I think that's it for our main course of our episode. And so we should jump into what we are currently working on, what we've been working on this week. And I might give your voice a break for a second and say that you should go and check out my courses on Egghead.io. The two most notable ones that I would recommend is checking out how to build a SaaS platform with Next.js, Supabase, and Stripe, which is a course I did maybe a year ago, which gets you, by the end of the course, you end up with a very real SaaS product charging very real money in production, which is very cool. So we go all the way from initial project, like starting an empty project, all the way through to having something in production that can charge real credit cards. And yeah, I highly recommend you check out that one. I'm about to do a rewrite of that course, and so
To Astro?
not that anything to Astro, maybe not that anything in the course doesn't work, but there's just even cooler things that have now come out in both Supabase and Stripe that make it even cooler, even easier. So the course will probably be even shorter. Which is awesome. And the other course I would recommend is my most recent one on caching Supabase data at the edge using KV storage and Cloudflare workers. And so that is a super recent course. It only came out a couple of months ago. And in that one, we look at how do we not only push like compute to the edge and have things running as close as possible to our users, but how do we also cache data from the database? And so how do you have your data and the things that you need to compute and run at request time? How do you have that in a server as close as possible to your users? So I highly recommend those ones. Simon, what have you been working on?
I've been working in parallel with that awesome company called ThinkMill. I'm repping today. I've mentioned we're building this Astro and Tailwind CSS site in a small/dream team of people I really like working with. So it's been awesome. I have also been guest hosting. We're starting this thing. I'm helping ThinkMill a lot with like content creation and like work in public and just developing this muscle memory of like doing stuff and talking about it. So I'm guest hosting the Twitter handle of ThinkMill. So it hasn't always been very active. These couple of weeks since I taken over, it's been very very, very active. We started only about 6 weeks ago, and each person who wants to within the team gets to guest host for like 2 weeks and just post stuff on the ThinkMill Twitter account to try just bring the brand and the community presence back, because ThinkMill was incredibly embedded in everything community-wise, with meetups and conferences, as you know, because you came to ReactConf. And when COVID hit, it's kind of like there wasn't like the most prolific transfer to online and like sharing stuff on social media when you can't be in person. So we kind of try bring that vibe. The good news is in-person events are kind of coming back, so you'll hear a lot of ThinkMill in there. But yeah, I've been sharing stuff through the Twitter account, building that. And in parallel, I'm working as ever on my Pro Tailwind workshops. Like I said, they're powered with Astro. It's going really well. I've presented 3 live workshops out of the 4 modules that I want to do. And now I'm going to switch gears for a second and start recording videos of the workshops that are already validated with the users. We're still doing a round of user interviews to kind of get more feedback before the recordings. The idea is like people have paid to attend this, and then they give feedback that they've paid money for. So it's like real feedback. It's not just fluff. And then with that, we can record and think that we've like done some decent user research and validation. If there's too much feedback of changes, we redo the workshop with another group and then see like if that gets better. But it feels that it's been going really well, that I'll be able to record these 3 workshops as a self-paced video course. And then I want to spend a good amount of time really nailing the 4th module, because it's like the big one of like the enterprise, big picture, using Tailwind at scale with large teams. And this has the potential, for me financially, it's like the one that you, instead of selling to one person here, one person there, you might have like a CTO of a really large company that has like 50 teams of 20 developers by like a team license, like which is, it makes more than all the individual sales in like one purchase. So I'm gonna try really put a lot of polish and research on that 4th module. So instead of rushing it now so I can record the videos, I'm gonna have an early release with the first 3 modules and then work on the 4th one.
Awesome. And yeah, they do sound like different concerns. Like the first 3 sound like they are around learning Tailwind and all the cool things you can do with Tailwind. And then this one is really focused on enterprise problems and yeah. And yeah, I think that itself is going to be hugely successful, because it's it's one of those things that like so many companies use Tailwind, and so being able to like if you were doing a course specifically on Remix or specifically on Vue or something like that, like a company might just not use that technology, or it might not be an option for them, and so therefore there's just like the course is a write-off. But since you can kind of incrementally adopt Tailwind, and a lot of companies are using it because it's becoming the industry standard for styling, I think that is going to be a very interesting one, a good one to do.
And also there's from my research, which is very extensive, like many months of like literally reading everything I can on this topic, there's almost nothing out there that caters for that like big picture thing. If you want to learn Tailwind, there's starting with the videos I recorded for Tailwind Labs, but there's so many people on YouTube doing fantastic tutorials. So the beginner and mid-level Tailwind educational content is everywhere. And then you hit that echelon where you go into like big problems, and there's a few blog posts of people. The way you kind of reverse engineer is by finding people asking questions and trying to understand their problems and then reaching out to them, because there's not from my understanding, there's not many videos or workshops or blog posts or anything about that problem space of how do you share Tailwind components with like 50 different teams working in different environments and different frameworks. Maybe the answer is everyone uses Astro and just mixes and matches every technologies together in one giant repository.
Yeah, I think that's going to be fantastic. But thank you so much for tuning in for another week. Once again, my name is John Myers. You can find me at johnmyers_io on Twitter.
I am Simon Vrashliotis. Oh, Simon Vrashliotis. Uh, I am Simon Swiss on Twitter. I'm going to stop saying on other things as well because I'm almost exclusively on Twitter or TikTok if you like puppy videos. That's another thing. Thank you so much for listening to my passion about Astro. I hope you want to check it out. I recommend you do. And in the meantime, you will hear us next week. See ya.
We'll see you then. Bye. Boom. Another one in the bag.
No.
No. I didn't actually. I just realized that I didn't record the a backup. So hopefully that
We're
was
not
all
live
good.
either. We're just talking in the void.
We are live because we have all of these people joining us, talking to us
Yes.
about. Bro Nifty. Sounds like you've been having lots of fun with Astro. And also Quick. I haven't
Oh, wow,
heard of
there's lots
Quick.
of components.
What is Quick?
Hey, there you go. I mentioned exactly this. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Yeah.
Bro Nifty.
Bro Nifty.
Astro front matter, it's exactly like having that's what I think, the loader function and action function that can run only on the server, and then you use loader as use action. Not use action, but use loader. That's replaced by the front matter, which is arguably for beginners. Like, you don't have to export a function. It's just like line, and then do stuff. Yep.
Yeah. And they also said that they've been checking out Matteo's new framework, Platformic DB, which uses a GraphQL API against Astro. Oh, maybe the application that you're building uses a GraphQL API against an Astro application for getting movie quotes. That's cool. Yeah, I haven't heard of Platformic DB.
Platformatic.
Right. I'm pronouncing it entirely wrong. Platformatic DB. That is a cool name. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to
So
check that out.
I myself, it feels weird when you do a GraphQL query in Astro because you almost like, can I use Prisma or something? Just say db.get post count 3, or just like doing the whole GraphQL thing. It makes sense from the client, so you can shape what response you get. But you could just get data, and if you get too much, you trim out. I think you did that in your stream in Astro in the remix, where you were getting the stuff from Notion, and then you were like, oh, we don't need all of that. We're just gonna keep the title and stuff.
Yeah.
And then
that's
you
just like,
nothing makes it to the client. It never send the whole JSON data and then filter and map to remove all the fields. You literally that's
you
the
run it
response
through
that
like a strainer. It's like pouring your pasta and water into a strainer, and you just like get rid of all the extra crap you don't need. And you're just left with the nicely mapped array of objects. Yeah.
Well, one of the selling point of GraphQL is avoid overfetching, but like if you can do that massaging,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for sure.
I've been talking to, obviously I work at ThinkMill. I'm trying to because there's a strong movement towards going back to doing stuff on the server between Remix and even Next API routes. All this, like, have Keystone, because Keystone is incredible. It just gives you GraphQL API full CRUD ready with filters and everything, and the best admin UI. Like the admin UI, I was talking about doing stuff without leaving the mouse, like the accessibility of it and the speed at which it works. You can, and if you have nested structures, you can create a post, and then in the author field, instead of I have to go back and create an author and then create my post to connect, you can create inline an author, and then the author can have post inline, and you can have these you can almost build an entire collection of entries in one. It opens these layered side panels on top of each other, and then at the end you go save, and bang, everything is built. And I've never seen any other. I'm biased, but I've never seen another CMS doing it that fast, like the authoring experience. But then I'm like, oh, it uses Prisma, and like just give me the Prisma ORM when I can drop to that level when I'm in Astro, instead of having the GraphQL schema a query to get. And I'm sure that's coming, because then that'll be my like Keystone, Astro, Tailwind CSS. Ooh.
We have a Keystone episode in here, don't we? We don't. Why don't we have... What is Keystone? every time Simon talks,
Yes.
I just realize there are all of these things in Simon's brain that we need to slowly extract,
Please,
hopefully
take
in a
them out.
non-painful way.
them out.
They heard that's full. And so we can, we should definitely do an episode on Keystone. And we
That's-
should do that separately to also having Jed on at some point.
Yes.
Jed Watson. Or maybe the same episode, but...
That's definitely guest episode territory. Like I myself work at ThinkMill, but like I said before, like I don't really know how internally Keystone works, because I haven't built any of the actual software. I've made a couple of videos on how you interface with it as a consumer, like DevRel stuff. But that'd be great to have someone with deep knowledge.
Yeah.
And
all right.
Keystone has a new developer advocate called Dinesh, he's been at ThinkMill for a while, but only started doing DevRel for Keystone a couple of months ago. So he would
Awesome.
definitely be a cool person to have on, and Jed
Yeah.
for sure.
Nice.
I'm basically going
we
to
should
bring
definitely do
everyone at ThinkMill week after week.
Yeah.
When we did the developer advocacy, I wanted Mick Fraser. She started, I mentioned her in the episode. She was head of advocacy at Dyson, and like she's got such a breadth of knowledge about like how to approach advocacy beyond just making cool videos and getting excited blog posts.
Yeah.
I
we
feel
should
like we could do so many interesting episodes.
definitely. Yeah.
And then I
We'll
can
slowly...
warrant taking a couple of hours during the day to record stuff. Although it's part of my part-time thing. Like there's no problem, but that'd be cool to just turn this podcast into ThinkMill propaganda.
Yeah, ThinkMill and Superbase propaganda will just slowly work through the whole company of guests. Bro Nifty also said giant corps and governments always have 100 different systems you can't scrap. Yeah, that example that I gave during the episode was I'm assuming I can say these things, but was REA Group or realestate.com.au where I worked. And yeah, there was this file that was just like gluing all this stuff together. Actually, there was also one at Up when I worked there. There were
Up Bank.
They both had. I found a glue file that just basically like mushes these different frameworks together. I appear to have disappeared.
Hey,
I'm not sure if Simon's broken something.
what have I done?
I mentioned company names and then now we've been shut down.
Yeah, take over from the FBI.
I think that we could still be heard. If we could still be heard, then yeah, it kind of like there was this file that mushed together all of these different frameworks that we were trying to use for different parts of the application. So that example that I gave was a very, the example I gave during the episode was a very real example that I stumbled upon. And so I think that's very common to have, a whole bunch of systems from, different people making calls at different points in time that something seemed like it would be the new hot thing, or even just, the best solution to a particular problem and then the best solution to another problem. And, over time you end up just collecting up all these different little bits, and then all of a sudden they need to be displayed in the same part of the application, and then everything is pain.
pain. Do you want a fun story? If you look at Bro Nifty's comment, the word always is in bold now, yeah?
Ooh.
So I clicked edit and I highlighted the word always and I pressed Command B. But Command B, no, that's not the cool part. Command B creates a new scene like this. So I've created a new empty scene, which is why we disappeared. And then I went back to that.
The special midnight scene. I like it.
But when you edit, it opens this it looks like kind of WordPress, like you're in a WYSIWYG editor. And I thought Command B will trigger a bold, but it triggered a new scene in the live stream. So
nice.
There's a learning.
Bro Nifty also said that we're great at tutorials. Thank you. That's I think Simon and I both have very similar ways to how we approach or want to approach video tutorials and making things just fun and taking advanced concepts like Simon was just talking about with this enterprise Tailwind idea, like taking this quite complex big problem that is really hard to solve, and then creating these really easy, accessible, easy to understand,
Yeah.
safe environments where we can teach them in a nice way.
Environment islands.
Environment islands.
It's a skill.
Exactly.
Honestly, it is a skill. Actually, we haven't done the episode on how to teach and why to teach, but it's a key skill to be able to transform something into a language and context that people can understand. Take hard concept and break it down in like simple terms and analogies. Good old developer analogy.
Yeah.
A skill I think
I feel
we
like
both have.
we've gone through these like different themes of the podcast so far. I don't know if like people listening have noticed, but it's like early on there was a lot of like meta stuff about what we do, like as like our setups and our gear and all this like easy stuff and like stuff about us, like our origin stories. And then we're now going through like a little bit more like tech stuff. And so we're talking about like, we did the Tailwind episode, we did the Edge episode, I guess that was earlier on, but we've done the Astro episode or the Super Bass episode. And so, we should go back into all of those, like get back into some of those like developer advocacy, like how we do things, why we do things. And
but it's
because that video, how to record good quality videos, is like probably still one of my favorite episodes. I think that was like our first episode. And there's so much good stuff in there, so many good tips. And
the podcast is about content creation and navigating the web, so it's kind of nice that we weave between both. It's also a good way to show that we're not just like hype people about products, like use this is great. I have no idea how it works, but just use it. It's kind of nice when we can both go in depth into the stuff we repping for or like kind of enjoy using. I've heard many times. I do believe that's one of our common unique traits. Is a lot of people are really good at selling or presenting stuff, or creating hype around it, and a lot of people are really good engineers. And then it's the subset of people that overlap these both things, like that can understand and write code quite well, but also present it and explain it is much thinner. So, high five!
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. It actually was.
That was pretty good. I was expecting the massive.
Yes, that's what I thought as well. At least on my side, that looked perfectly timed.
Same. So, no, I think the latency has been really good today. We haven't cut off.
We have actually upgraded our internet, so that could be a big part of it.
You're coming in hot at 1080p? I'll check. John comes in at 720
again. Boo! We want 1080.
I'm 1080.
I doubled my.
Oh, can you see that?
You look very nice.
I thought you had information.
I just mean at our house we. Where have you gone? What is that?
It's green screen without a green screen.
Excellent.
It's like Zoom when you go inside a banana or whatever, just the eyes
slowly get bricked up. The quality that I'm coming in at has probably just plummeted because I've started running a speed test. But we've doubled the upload speed, so our upload speed is now 40 megabits per second, which before was 20. So that probably would help a lot with podcasting and live streams and things, or at least that was the plan.
I think I'm on 140, but most importantly, I'm 100 down, 40 up, which is the best.
Okay. I thought you meant 140 up. I was like, what are you talking about? How do you have that? You're still in Australia.
It's what I have is basically almost the best you can get, unless you're in the city and you pay like enterprise crazy stuff. But I Skyped with my parents yesterday, and they have like 1 meg down and 200 up, and instead like a basic cheap plan, like budget plan. Like, come on, Switzerland internet is pretty good,
right?
But I was gonna say what's changed for me a lot is it still goes through Wi-Fi. I have this like mesh of routers. I forgot by who it is. Orbi.
Google Nest?
Orbi.
Orbi. Okay.
I splurged on that after getting a hefty how is it called, profit share
Bonus?
from Tailwind Labs. Yeah, I was like, it's almost $1,000. I would never have spent $1,000 to get better internet, but I was like,
Wow.
this is the chance. So
Was that
there's
multiple WAPs or just one singular?
there's the modem router stuff in the kitchen near the, and then I have one here in literally behind the camera, and then one in the backyard in the shed right at the back. And so
Nice.
there's Wi-Fi everywhere, but then the relay that I have here has a Ethernet port out, and so I go in my computer.
Awesome.
But it still goes through Wi-Fi to this node, but then
Sure.
it's still significantly faster to have the Ethernet plugged in, even if it has to go through Wi-Fi first, because the connection is so strong that it's way better than the signal you get when you go Wi-Fi from the computer to the actual little node.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
Nice.
internet's been absolutely rock solid ever since.
Nice.
It's always your fault, John, when something doesn't work. So
Yeah.
no, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But for the Pro Tailwind workshops, that was like a real anxiety. I was like, I need really good. I don't want to be like, all right, so let's. Sorry, can you repeat? Like for 4 hours straight, trying to figure out. And we also pay for the business Zoom account,
Ooh.
which means you get
Business.
1080p camera. Like most Zoom calls actually have up to 1080p when you share your screen. But like the people's cameras, if you have discussion, and I like to use eCam to hijack instead of sharing my screen, I just go in full. You've seen me do that. I just go in full. I can't do it now, but like in full mode where I switch the scenes with my keyboard and like I move to the side and I have like a slide on the other portion.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want this to be 1080. I don't want to do all this work and it's like 320 pixelated crap.
Yeah.
So good internet and then good Zoom 1080p plan is pretty cool. And nothing related, but this comment that I've put in front of us for like half an hour. Tom joined the Discord yesterday because he had a problem with the image optimization plugin extension, and there was lots of help. So if you trying Astro, join the Discord. It's a friendly place. I mentioned it. The community is really cool. There's a lot of good buzz, positive buzz, and a lot of really nice people joining the community. I think Astro has a good philosophy and it attracts people that have been doing web stuff for a long time, and they recognize the benefits. And because the docs have this inclusive and talk about competition and stuff, it kind of creates this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That idea of, like talking about like, if this is the thing that you're trying to do, maybe Astro isn't the right thing and maybe you should check out Next.js, like that thing that you mentioned. It was something I really liked about like Prisma as well. When I was at Prisma, I wrote some of the comparison articles, and my manager was just like, it's not about promoting all of the great things about Prisma. It's about doing an honest comparison about things, like mention the things that the other tool is better at. Because we want people to find value in that information. It doesn't, like, we don't want to trick them into using Prisma or whatever. We want them to use it because it's the best thing at doing the thing that they're trying to do.
I'm going to try something I've never tried. I've screenshotted that call out on the site, and I'm going to try to paste it in Ecamm Live, see what happens. Okay, I can't. But what I can do...
we've joined Simon's stream of let's just turn everything into this high quality video production. Let's create a Hollywood movie podcast.
Do you know the preview app in Mac? Just the thing that opened. If you have an image in your clipboard and you go Command N for new in preview, it opens that thing. So you can't paste it in. You just go N and it does it. But the reason I'm saying this is now I can drag it here. I just want to show you how nice. You're right. I'm like, let's make this. The file is called AAA. If that helps. There you go. If your project falls into the it's the whole website versus application, Astro might not be the best choice, and that's okay. Check out Next.js for a great application. And it's awesome. It's like it stands out in the copy. It's not just like a little
Yeah.
asterisk in light gray, 10
really,
pixels.
really fine print. Yeah, it goes down to like 8-point text. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
really cool.
it's in the Y Astro page. If you check it out, it's literally at the top of the page. It just like it doesn't try to. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, let's go have some lunch. Lunchtime.
And then we're going to record.
other work
John's
done
gonna
time.
talk about what do we do next?
Remix might be coming up next, or maybe we should jump to one of those how to teach others or why to teach others ones.
Well, now
Um,
we've earned 1 week. Oh no, not even.
No,
'Cause
it's just next week.
One has to go right now today, and
Yeah, we're too far gone at this point. We are.
we
need
went back
put
to
one out today.
having something to release next week before you.
yeah. But
Unless
yes,
this
I probably
chat is like a third episode.
yeah, that's true. I need to. Yeah, I will edit it tonight and upload it.
Yeah.
Because so it'll go live tomorrow.
No one
the
exactly.
Superbase
No
one.
one will cancel us and say, "I can't believe the schedule is." Yeah.
How could you? Sometimes it's on a Wednesday and sometimes it's on a Thursday. I'm never listening to this podcast again.
Exactly.
Hopefully not.
No.
All right, Simon, you have a
Yes.
lovely day. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Bro Nifty. Thank you for Thomas for taking time out of your day to hang out with us. It was lovely.
It
and
was.
we will see you again next week.
Peace. That's our second exit, like the non-podcast but live stream.
Yeah, no, it's for the real fans, the
Exactly.
true people that hang out with us.
Yeah, VIP access. All right. See you later, man.
Peace.
I'll send the files and all the stuff.
Excellent.
Bye.
See ya.